Hello, Assalamualaikum, and good morning. My name is Sarim Ali Ghazi, and this is my research thesis titled Feasibility of Blockchain in E-Voting, which would not have been possible without the aid of my supervisor, Dr. Maseed Ghazali. So, moving on. The overview of the presentation follows my research follows that introduction, literature review, research methodology, requirements analysis and design, and a conclusion. So the introduction, we identify the problem background. So the problem background is the fact that there is no unified method used across the world for voting. That tells us that there is no perfect method employed for e-voting or voting in general thus far. Secondly, to maintain ballot integrity and to have results out in a day or just as fast as possible, any country would spend millions of dollars to for and employ a task force of thousands and thousands of people just to verify that, all which could be avoided otherwise. Furthermore, issues like with normal voting solutions with ballots and secret ballots, voters are not able to reach voting sites in remote areas. The ballots of themselves can be tampered with, and simple human errors sometimes, like counting errors or just like votes that get destroyed or damaged in the process, they can all significantly affect results of the elections. Finally, illicit matters like vote selling or people being forced to vote for someone and having to surrender their democratic right are still a widespread problem in a lot of countries in the world. The aim of the research is then to uh, address blockchain feasibility inside and the further adaptation of it into a modern day e-voting system. Project objectives are simply to first study the drawbacks and shortcomings of existing solutions for voting systems with user input taken from a wide range of people eligible for voting. Secondly, to propose two types of high fidelity prototypes with basic front end UI but a full fledged and resilient backend to basically test the integrity of the blockchain system. To analyze how the users interact with the prototype and perform rigorous testing of the security solution, the e-voting solution, to assess the feasibility and ease of adapting to blockchain based on e-voting technology, especially when compared to existing solutions. This is the most important part, how we because an e-voting system is useless as long as the public does not trust it. So this is the part where we uh, idealize or realize the trust of the public in a blockchain based solution. The project scope is simple. The research will start on by focusing on the people that come from democratic countries. The research is then done with people who are eligible to cast votes in their own national elections in mind, and their personal interactions with the national polling systems and their experience. The research then focuses on the experience of the voting solutions offered by their countries and how what they got from it and how a better implementation with blockchain technology would compare to what they have. A high fidelity prototype will then be set up to deploy to an optimal number of nodes and computational power backing up the blockchain to test an instance of blockchain based e-voting happening on a blockchain with avid attempts done to sacrifice the integrity of the counts and outcome of using all possible means to test the resilience of the possible solution. The research would then elaborate on feasibility and adaptation in real world scenarios and point out any technological gap or significant drawbacks of the proposed solution. Uh, for this presentation in general, I'm using I'm highlighting two current systems. The WATS solution was a small scale was a blockchain based small solution deployed on a small scale during the 2016 U.S. elections for this by the state of Georgia. This was mostly done for to have the votes for army men deployed across the country or overseas workers and just people who were not just like a very small sample was used for this. However, the research findings that came in the following years basically showed that the solution was not safe at all. The people it was susceptible to attempts like altering word count, suppressing ballots. Attackers were able to learn the IPs of the users and even were able to gain personal access to users' private information. This private information can range from social security numbers to ID card numbers to even copies of ID cards, which is not something you want to be happening. Uh, Estonia, on the other hand, has been practicing e-voting since 2005. However, their solution has no transparency of operation, which has led to a very slow public acceptance. And then again, this solution does not have any blockchain and has been time and time critically acclaimed that it is very widely prone to cyber attacks. But I guess since it's a small scale country like Estonia, where no one would really want to alter the results, uh, there have not been any significant attempts, but it has been noted time and time and again that if there were to be an actual cyber attack, anyone could alternate the results of Estonians e-voting very easily. The research methodology then was pretty simple. Phase one was was laying down the theoretical foundation. We identified research problem and as shown below before, and then we discussed the aims and the objectives of the research. These were both identified, realized, and written down on paper. Phase two was then taking the research, the theoretical foundation, the research problems, and then finding and identifying research articles that were similar to it, addressed it, and developed on it. And so basically, existing solutions were identified that were similar to the research problems. And then phase three was basically deciding the research methodology, the techniques that were to be employed and used in this research. For us, we wanted our findings to be based on comparison and quantitative analysis. Is the and during this phase, we also designed the questionnaire, which we would later use for gaining user input. And we basically came to the personalization that personal blockchain as a technique would be the most feasible solution. In phase four, the interviews were then taken, and we were able to ask users on their input regarding their acceptance on the blockchain technology and their personal and how their interactions with the voting solutions based on their own country was. And most of them generally reported general dissatisfaction with their current voting solutions, and a lot of them uh, hinted at uh, hinted at satisfaction towards the solution with around 70% of them hinted at satisfaction towards a blockchain based e-voting solution, as it would allow them to, as a lot of them were overseas nationals, so they were very excited about the factor that they would be able to cast votes with much greater ease. The nationals, the nationals we interviewed basically were dissatisfied with the polling processions in their country. They named them out to be inefficient, and not secure enough, and very corruptible. And they all just generally supported had a positive outlook on e-voting system based on blockchain technology. And then finally, we used the observations from phase four, and we were able to narrow down to two possible blockchain based solutions that we would want to carry out. And then we proposed to design prototypes, and we will actually design these prototypes in the next stretch of the the PSM2. These would be working. These would be two working prototypes. This is an example of how the user input was gathered. It was using Google Docs. This is the initial stage. This is the general blockchain architecture for a brief understanding of how e-voting based on blockchain would happen. So uh, every voter would be granted their private key, and the public key infrastructure would then create a public key opposed to the private key. The private key is something that would stay private to the user, and that because it is something that can be used to identify the user. The public key, which is made against the private key, is only there to verify that the public key is equal to the private key, which means that it only allows the user to verify that there if the public key exists on the blockchain, a user would be able to verify using his private key that okay, my public key is existing on the blockchain, so my vote has been counted on the blockchain. So basically, on the slide on the right side, you can see the voter would then send his signature and his voter ID. This data would be sent to decentralized miners. Miners would then carry out the proof of work using the SHA-256 algorithm, and hash the block and calculate the hashes. And then after a consensus-based algorithm, and after consensus is formed, the new block will be added to the existing blockchain. In conclusion of the research, we were able to narrow down to two possible solutions where e-voting based on blockchain would be feasible. Each one is better for a specific use case. The Hyperledger framework blockchain is vastly superior and efficient for processing votes on a large scale nationwide base. This would be a scale where there are millions and millions of voters involved, as Hyperledger Fabric blockchain allows there to be a less cost of operation. There is no mining involved. There's the generation of blocks is very fast. The transaction speed is very fast. It can handle up to 3,500 transactions per second. However, there is more legislation involved, but this should be no problem when you're implementing a solution at a nationwide scale. However, for solutions that for a smaller scale, for example, like a university level scale, or even a boardroom level scale, where there's just going to be a few hundreds of participants involved, you would not want to necessarily get involved into the legislature of registering your organization under the Hyperledger Fabric community, Linux community. For that instance, we would the research would like to promote the use of the Ethereum blockchain. This is as safe as it gets. And it would be fully autonomous because by the use of smart contracts. The only downside being that it does come with a significant cost of operation. Every transaction has a decent fee, and the transaction speed is generally much lesser as well. It's only 33 transactions per second, and most importantly, why this solution would not be considerable for a large scale solution is that each block takes 9.7 minutes to generate. Okay, so this would generally be a solution for a small scale boardroom meeting level. So this concludes my presentation for my thesis.